Hello, everyone. This is Gabby at English Staples. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, we'll explore a real life story about a disruptive passenger who was escorted off a Delta Airlines flight in Miami after refusing to turn off their cell phone. Along the way, you will learn practical vocabulary and review grammar points such as passive voice, third conditional, phrasal verbs, coordinating conjunction, gerunds, and infinitives. Let's dive right in. The title: Unruly Passenger Removed from Delta Flight at Miami Airport. Unruly is an adjective and it means rebellious, difficult, out of control. Removed from is a prepositional verb and it means taken off or must exit. So our title is saying that a difficult passenger was taken off a Delta flight at Miami International Airport. On Monday, April 27th, 2026, a passenger was removed from a Delta Airlines flight at Miami International Airport after refusing to comply with safety regulations. Let's break this down. On Monday, April 27th, 27 is a cardinal number, as we can see here. Cardinal numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 27. So 27 is a cardinal number. However, in dates, we don't use cardinal number. We say it like an ordinal number. And instead of 27, we would say 27th. The date would read April 27th, 2026. A passenger was removed is in the passive voice where we have be in past, was, plus the past participle of remove. A passenger was removed from a Delta flight at Miami International Airport after refusing to comply with. What does that mean? Refusing to comply with is a gerund phrase. Starts with the gerund, refusing. And it means choosing to disobey, choosing to ignore orders, or unwilling to cooperate. We have the word regulations. What does regulations mean? Regulations is a noun and it means rules set by authorities. So this sentence is pretty much telling us that on Monday, April 27th, a passenger was taken off a Delta Airlines flight at Miami International Airport. Why? Because the passenger chose to disobey safety rules that were set by the airlines and the government authorities. The flight, identified as Flight 1323, had been scheduled to depart for Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta Airport. The flight identified as Flight 1323. Identified as is a verb phrase and it means recognized or labeled or classified. Had been scheduled is past perfect, had scheduled, passive, in passive form. Here we have to depart, which is an infinitive verb, which means to leave. Why do we say depart for and not depart to? Well, depart for means that you leave with the intention of going to that place. And in this case, that place is Hartsfield Jackson Airport in Atlanta. It left Miami International and headed toward Hartsfield Jackson, Atlanta, refusing to comply with safety regulations. The refusing to comply with is a gerund phrase. And inside this gerund phrase, we have an infinitive, to comply. Look at this. In this sentence, the flight, comma, identified as flight 1323, comma, had been scheduled to depart for Atlanta. Look at this. Here we have these words identified as flight 1323. This is what you call non identifying because the information is extra information. We could have just said the flight had been scheduled to depart for Hartsfield Jackson, but extra information is given here, identified as flight 1323. In other words, it's not necessary to have this information. You see that? So this sentence is telling us that the flight, and they tell us specifically which flight by giving us that additional information, had been scheduled to leave for Atlanta. But because of what happened earlier, where you had this passenger who was not conforming or who was not obeying the rules that were set by the airlines and the government authorities, because of that unruliness, the flight was delayed. The flight left late and left after the time it was scheduled to leave for Atlanta. According to a report by USA Today, the incident occurred while the aircraft was taxiing toward the runway. What is this sentence saying? Let's break it down. According to. What does that mean? According to is a prepositional phrase. It means based on, or as reported by, or as stated by. So it's saying that based on a report by USA Today. Who is USA Today, or what is USA Today? USA Today is a major American daily newspaper and multi-platform news media company. The incident occurred while the aircraft was taxiing. Okay, we have some more vocabulary here. Incident. What does incident mean? Incident is a noun and it's an unpleasant event. It's not a happy event. And occurred is a verb and it means happened. So far, what this is telling us is that based on a report from this major American daily newspaper, USA Today, the incident, which is the removal of that passenger, it was an unpleasant event that happened while the aircraft was taxiing. What is taxiing? Taxiing is the present participle from the word taxi. It means rolling or moving smoothly and easily or driving. So, what this is actually saying is that the aircraft was moving toward the runway. It was not yet on the runway, but it was heading in that direction when the problem started with the passenger who was unruly. So, this whole sentence now is telling us that based on a report from this major American daily newspaper, USA Today, the incident of the unruly passenger who was removed from the plane happened while the aircraft was taxiing or was moving or heading toward the runway. Okay, let's move on. Crew members repeatedly instructed the passenger to turn off their cell phone as required before takeoff. Okay, let's break this down. Crew members is a noun phrase, and it means a team of two or more trained people that operate an aircraft. We can say that, or we can say who for people, right? Who, or we can say that. So we can make a choice. So these are the crewmates. So that would include like the pilots, the flight attendants, air marshal. So the crew members repeatedly. What does repeatedly mean? Repeatedly is an adverb and it means many times. The flight attendants walk around in the plane and make sure that everyone is safe and secure. They told the passenger many times to turn off the cell phone. To turn off is a phrasal verb in infinitive form, and it means to disconnect or to terminate. The crew repeatedly told the passenger to turn off their cell phone as it was required before takeoff. So, this is a rule that the airline has where you're asked to turn off your cell phone while they're taking off. Clearly, clearly, there must be a reason why they're insisting that that gets done. So it's our responsibility as passengers to obey the rules. If this is what they say, then we need to pay attention and do that because the safety is for all passengers. This sentence is pretty much saying that the crew members told the passenger over and over to turn off the cell phone as it was required for takeoff. Takeoff is a noun and it means departure, leaving. However, the individual refused to hang up. And to hang up is also a phrasal verb and it has the same meaning as to turn off. To hang up. It's a phrasal verb and it's also in infinitive form and it also means to disconnect or to terminate. And their behavior soon became disruptive. Disruptive is an adjective and it means disorderly in behavior or troubling. The passenger refused to hang up. It's like the passenger does not want to hang up. We don't know if it's male or female. That's the reason why the passenger is referred to as there. Yeah, so you might say it's the passenger is singular and there is usually used for plural. In modern English, it's okay to use there with singular, like in this case, because we don't know if it's male or female. In the past, we usually say he or she or him or her whenever we're making reference to people and we don't know their gender. Nowadays, in modern English, it's very common to say there. Okay? In this sentence, the individual refused to disconnect the phone or to terminate the call. And because of that, their behavior was cited as disorderly or troubling, disruptive. We don't know if an argument started. We have no idea what happened because they did not report what was actually said. As a result, The aircraft was forced to return to the gate, where the passenger was escorted off the plane by airline staff. As a result is a linking phrase, and it means because of that, or consequently. We were just looking at the behavior here of the passenger who did not want to hang up the phone. And then now we're using this linking phrase. As a result, this is what happens. The aircraft was forced to return. So, as a result means because of that refusal to hang up the phone. As a result also means consequently. The aircraft was forced to return. Let's look at this word, forced. Forced is a verb. It's an action done under compulsion. You're compelled by circumstances. So you have no choice. When you're forced, you have no choice. You have to do whatever you're told to do. But in this case, the aircraft was forced. So there was no going back here. The passenger would not obey the rules. And so, for the safety of everyone on the aircraft was forced or was compelled to go back to the gate where the passenger was escorted. And the word escorted is a verb, and it means being led by authorized people to leave immediately. So this situation became very serious. The flight eventually departed about an hour later than scheduled. Okay, eventually. What does eventually mean? Eventually is an adverb and it means in the end. The word departed is a verb and it means left. In the end, the flight left about an hour later. Notice here, later than is comparative language, showing the comparison between the original scheduled departure time versus the delayed departure time. This sentence is saying, in the end, the flight left about an hour later than it was originally scheduled for. Backtracking here on was escorted, we can say was escorted is also in passive voice, where we have the be verb in singular past plus past participle of escort, the verb escort. Was escorted, passive voice. A spokesperson for Delta stated that the safety of passengers and crew is always prioritized, adding that the airline maintains a zero tolerance policy toward disruptive conduct. Let's break this down and see what this sentence is saying. Spokesperson. Spokesperson is a noun. It's a person authorized to speak on behalf of an organization, company, or the public. A spokesperson for Delta stated that the safety of passengers and crew is always prioritized. Prioritized is a verb, to give something top importance. That's what it means. And notice here is prioritized is in the passive voice. Be verb in present, singular, because we're talking about the safety, plus the past participle of prioritize, which is here. Prioritized. Adding that the airline maintains a zero tolerance policy. Zero tolerance policy is a noun phrase and it means a strict rule with severe consequences toward prohibited behaviors. So it's a strict rule with very serious repercussions or consequences toward behaviors that are not allowed, behaviors that are prohibited. And in this case, what we're talking about is a disruptive conduct or disruptive behavior. So, what this sentence is saying, an authorized person from Delta said that the safety of passengers and the crew is always their top priority. It's very important to the airline. The spokesperson also said that Delta maintains a zero tolerance policy where all disruptive behaviors are unacceptable, they are prohibited. If the passenger had complied with crew instructions, the delay could have been avoided. Here we have a third conditional. This is unreal past situation. We have an if clause. If the passenger had complied with crew instruction, and we have the main clause, the delay could have been avoided. What does complied mean? This word, complied. It's a verb and it means acted in accordance with wishes, commands, rules, or requirements. Delay. Delay is a noun. It's a period of waiting caused by obstacles. Period of waiting, that's the time that the crew took to tell the passenger to turn the phone off, and then the passenger gets all upset. That's time. That's time going right there. Then they had to move the aircraft back to the gates and then remove the passenger from the aircraft. That's a lot of time caused by obstacles. And the obstacles here is the passenger not obeying the rules. So in the end, it's really very costly. It costs everybody some time. Who knows that maybe this delay could cause other passengers to miss their connecting flights. Do you see how this can actually cost people? What does the word avoided mean? Avoided is a verb and it means prevented or stopped something from happening. Could have been avoided is passive. We have a modal, could. We have, which is an indicator of the perfect tense. We have be in past participle, been, that adds the element of passive voice, plus avoid in past participle. So could have been avoided forms a modal perfect passive. This incident highlights ongoing concerns about air rage, a term used to describe aggressive or non-compliant behavior aboard aircrafts. Highlights. Here, highlights is a verb. It means brings attention to. So the incident brings attention to ongoing concerns about air rage. People are concerned about air rage. And we said here, air rage, a term used to describe aggressive or non-compliant behavior aboard aircraft. So, like air rage, we also have road rage. Drivers on the road who are angry and aggressive, or sometimes they're just non compliant. They just don't follow the rules. You will have some people who are driving, they will cut in front of you, they don't use their indicators, they they're just rude. They honk their horns for no good reason, really. They flash their lights for no good reason, really. Yeah, they're just angry people, road rage. Sometimes there are those people who really act selfishly and cause other people to become angry. You're driving at 40 miles per hour in an 80 miles per hour lane. Come on. That's going to outrage someone. Someone is going to get upset. If you're driving 40 miles per hour, you need to be driving in that lane, not in an 80 miles per hour lane. Yes, road rage is real. So there's air rage and there's road rage. This sentence is actually saying that the incident that we have here with this unruly passenger being taken off the aircraft brings to the attention this problem of air rage where people become rude and aggressive, or they don't want to follow the rules when they're on board the aircraft. That's what this sentence is saying. Under regulations enforced by the Federal Aviation Administration, commonly known as FAA. All right, let's look at the word enforced. Enforced is a verb and it means imposed by or become compulsory. The FAA, which is a government agency, oversees the airlines. They have regulations that are compulsory that the airlines have to follow. Let's look at this. Are required. Here again, we see the passive voice. Be in present, plural, right? Required is the past participle of the verb require. So this sentence is saying, under regulations enforced by the FAA, passengers are required to follow all crew instructions. Those who fail to do so, those meaning those passengers who fail to follow the rules, may be fined or even face criminal charges. This is very serious. Fined is a verb and it means charge money as a punishment for breaking a rule or a law. May be fined here is in the passive voice where we have the modal may plus be plus the past participle of the verb fine, may be fined, or even face criminal charges. They're very serious offenses. In recent years, the FAA has imposed significant penalties on disruptive passengers. In recent years, what does that mean? It means recently, or lately, or presently here. Even it's a prepositional phrase, but it acts as an adverb, modifying the verb has imposed, telling us when the penalties happened, which is in recent years. The FAA has imposed significant penalties on disruptive passengers. Has imposed significant penalties on is a verb phrase, and it means that the FAA has applied severe consequences on disruptive passengers. Civil fines can reach up to $43,658 per violation, and multiple violations may result in even higher total penalties. This is pretty steep. For some people, this is a lot of money. For me personally, this is a lot of money. Let's see. What are civil fines? Is a noun phrase, and it means monetary penalties set by government agencies or court for not following rules. The word violation is a noun and it means the act of breaking a rule, law, or agreement. And penalties is a noun, and it means punishments, fines for breaking a rule, a law, or a contract. So, what is this sentence saying? This sentence is saying that monetary punishments can reach up to $43,658 per violation or per act of breaking the rule. And if you have multiple violations, that could even result in a higher total penalties, which means the amount of money you would be charged would exceed $43,658. In my opinion, that's pretty hefty. That's a lot of money. At least in my case, it would be a lot of money. In more serious cases, individuals can be referred to law enforcement authorities or banned from future flights. Banned is a verb, and it means prohibited or forbidden or officially excluded from the use of something. So in this case, it means passengers who violate the rules would be excluded from future flights. Can be referred and can be banned. They're both in passive voice. For can be referred, you have the modal can, and then you have be verb plus the past participle of the verb refer, which is referred. And here we have can be banned in the passive voice, with can being the modal and be verb to form the passive plus past participle of ban, making it banned. Here they had mentioned that civil fines can be up to $43,658 per violation, and for multiple violations, it would even result in higher total penalties. They have moved on to say that in more serious cases, individuals can be referred to law enforcement authorities. In other words, what would be more serious than a passenger not turning off his cell phone when told to do so? Well, maybe assault, passengers assaulting each other, or passengers assaulting crew members, having a weapon on board, or maybe smoking in the aircraft. That's not allowed. Those would be more serious cases. In cases like those, the police would be involved, and those passengers could possibly be excluded from all future flights. They would never again be allowed to fly. They would be banned. Although incidents of unruly behavior have decreased since their peak in 2021, authorities continue to warn that strict enforcement will be maintained. Some vocabulary. Although is a subordinating conjunction, and it means in spite or regardless of the fact that. Unruly, we saw unruly in our title, the word unruly. So let's just revisit the meaning. Unruly is an adjective, and it means rebellious, difficult, and out of control. Unruly behavior. Decreased. What is decreased? Decreased is a verb, and it means reduced, have gotten less, or declined since their peak, and peak is a noun and it means the highest point. Authorities continue to warn. To warn is an infinitive verb, and it means to put someone on notice in advance about possible danger, risk, or problem. Strict is an adjective, means being firm, rigid, or exact. So the authorities continue to notify the public, to notify passengers. The rules are still in place and people still need to follow these rules. Pretty much that's what this is saying. This sentence is telling us that even though the unruly behavior of passengers have decreased since they got to their highest point in 2021, they're still warning us, they're still telling us that strict enforcement is in place. And when we say enforcement, what do we mean? The word enforcement is a noun and it means the act of compelling obedience to laws, rules, or agreements. So it's a pretty strong word. Enforcement will be maintained, which means that the airlines as well as the government will continue to enforce these rules. Just to step back a minute, here we see although is a subordinating conjunction. What it does, it introduces the dependent clause. Although incidents of unruly behavior have decreased since their peak in 2021, it contrasts with the independent or main clause. Authorities continue to warn that strict enforcement will be maintained, although is contrasting the two ideas. Regardless of the fact that incidents have decreased, authorities will continue to enforce strict rules. Passengers are therefore encouraged to remain cooperative, especially during critical phases of flight, such as takeoff and landing. Are encouraged is in passive voice. We have be verb here in present plural, plus past participle of encourage, encouraged. Let's look at some vocabulary here. Cooperative is an adjective and it means willing to work with others, helpful, especially during critical phases. Critical phases is a noun phrase and it means important and sensitive moments in a process. And in this case, the process is the takeoff and landing. So this sentence is pretty much telling us that passengers are encouraged to remain willing to work with others, whether it's other passengers or with the crew, especially during critical phases, during those important and sensitive moments when the flight is about to take off and when it's about to land. And this is the end of our news analysis. I will proceed to read this news report without any stops. Unruly passenger removed from Delta flight at Miami Airport. On Monday, April 27th, 2026, a passenger was removed from a Delta Airlines flight at Miami International Airport after refusing to comply with safety regulations. The flight, identified as Flight 1323, had been scheduled to depart for Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta Airport. According to a report by USA Today, the incident occurred while the aircraft was taxiing toward the runway. Crew members repeatedly instructed the passenger to turn off their cell phone as required before takeoff. However, the individual refused to hang up and their behavior became disruptive. As a result, the aircraft was forced to return to the gate, where the passenger was escorted off the plane by airline staff. The flight eventually departed about an hour later than scheduled. A spokesperson for Delta stated that the safety of passengers and the crew is always prioritized, adding that the airline maintains a zero tolerance policy toward disruptive conduct. If the passenger had complied with crew instructions, the delay could have been avoided. This incident highlights ongoing concerns about air rage, a term used to describe aggressive or non compliant behavior aboard aircraft. Under regulations enforced by the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, passengers are required to follow all crew instructions. Those who fail to do so may be fined or even face criminal charges. In recent years, the FAA has imposed significant penalties on disruptive passengers. Civil fines can reach up to $43,658 per violation, and multiple violations may result in even higher total penalties. In more serious cases, individuals can be referred to law enforcement authorities or banned from future flights. Although incidents of unruly behavior have decreased since their peak in 2021, authorities continue to warn that strict enforcement will be maintained. Passengers are therefore encouraged to remain cooperative, especially during critical phases of flight, such as takeoff and landing. That's all for today's lesson. I hope you learned some useful vocabulary and grammar from this real news story. If you enjoyed the lesson, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and please leave a comment below using one of the new words or expressions you learned today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.